what was I saying about Leonardo Boff? It's, he said charity wasn't enough, development wasn't enough, because those are, in those models, the agency is not placed in the hands of the poor themselves to organize and seek, their own betterment and the betterment of the countries in which they live. It's like that old saying, you can give a man a fish and feed him for a day. You can teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. But, like, for example, so throwing money at poor countries or giving them resources doesn't really help anything in the long run, because the stuff runs out. It's a band-aid solution. But if the oppressed of a country teach themselves, and I'm not saying that colonizers should teach them, but if the oppressed of a country teach and organize themselves, that's like them teaching each other to fish, and they can fish for a lifetime, right? I know that's kind of a weird metaphor, but that's part of why it's so important for the agency of oppressed peoples themselves to be emphasized in theology. I mean, not only because it's like more sustainable and like more true to the reality of movements that these changes are coming up out of the ranks of the afflicted themselves, but focusing on the agency of oppressed persons shows that they have like value and can make a contribution to society, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying. It's just that meaningful agency of people with disabilities shouldn't be replaced by patronizing, charitable, so-called solutions. Personally speaking, my own understanding of disability creatively mixes a number of the models that are described here. I personally reject the moral model of disability as one that stigmatizes disabled people and their families by understanding disability as punishment from God for sin. The only element of the moral model that may be palatable in the is the sense that disability is a trial to strengthen one's character. But, as I noted, this sensibility should only be expressed by people with disabilities themselves and never by an outsider. I have mixed feelings about the medical, rehabilitative, or economic, and charity models. While it's true that therapy and medication provided in the medical model can be essential to a person's well-being, it is also true that the medical model's impulse toward a cure or an end to mental disability, figured as illness, is unhelpful, especially for people with chronic mental disabilities that are lifelong. So basically, to eradicate the so-called illness, you would have to eradicate the person altogether, which is not cool. And while the rehabilitative and charity models can improve the lives of people with disabilities by finding them meaningful work and offering them resources, it is also true that these models can be patronizing for people with disabilities who affirm themselves as they are and value their own agency. In my personal theology, again my dissertation, I prefer some combination of the human rights, identity, social, cultural, and limits models. I affirm that disability is a human rights issue that is in need of constructive proposals and policy to protect disability rights. I affirm that disability is an identity that you can be proud of and that you can celebrate. I affirm that disability is a social construction in which environmental barriers disable people, that it is a category that is informed by a variety of cultural factors, for example, art, literature, and economics, and I affirm that it is a state of having embodied limits. There's a kitten crying, my kitten. He's being dramatic. But I affirm that disability is a state of having embodied limits that people will enter into at some point of their lives. Most people will. But none of these models, at least the models that I prefer, the human rights, identity, social, cultural, and limits models, none of these truly delegitimize the others. They can work together. They serve as supplements in a broader understanding of disability than any of them can offer by themselves. And thank you very much for sticking with me through this lecture, and I hope to have another one up for you soon. Best wishes, and all of you, please take care of yourselves.